are looking at completing the square. So first thing to understand is why we learn about the process of completing the square. It all relates back to quadratics, and completing the square is a method in which you can use to solve quadratics and also find the coordinates of the turning point of your quadratic curve. A reminder that quadratic graphs are these U-shaped curves. The minimum point is called the turning point. Also to note that if the graph is of a minus x squared, this will be almost like an N-shaped curve, and the turning point here is the maximum point of the curve. In terms of exam style questions, you may not be asked to complete the square. They may ask you to write your equation of your quadratic in the form of x plus m squared plus n, where m and n are integer values that you need to work out. Also note that the letters might not be m and n, they could be any letter that the exam board chooses. So let's get into the process of how we complete the square. First, we look at the equation of x squared plus 6x minus 7, and we want to write this in the form of x plus a squared plus b. Our first step is looking at the b coefficient, where a is the coefficient in front of the x squared, b is the coefficient in front of the x, and c is our integer coefficient. So step 1 is to divide by 2, leaving us with x plus 3 squared. So in dividing that by 2, that is your value of a. What I like to do is then expand and simplify this double bracket, giving us x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9. So that then leaves us with x squared plus 6x plus 9. We refer back to our original equation, which is x squared plus 6x minus 7. So then we think, what do we have to do to get from a positive 9 to a negative 7? We have to subtract 16. That becomes our value for b, and we put that on the outside of our bracket. How this links to the coordinates of the turning point. This value of x, when your bracket is equal to 0, is the x coordinate of your turning point, and your value for b is your y coordinate. Therefore, the coordinates of the turning point for this quadratic is minus 3 minus 16. We'll look at another one, and here we will look at solving by completing the square. Step 1, exactly the same. We divide our b coefficient by 2. X plus 1 squared. Expand and simplify your double bracket. That's x squared plus 1x plus 1x plus 1. We refer back to our original equation, which is that of minus 8. So we have to think, what do we need to do to get to minus 8? We subtract 9. From this point, we've got our completing the square. So let's just rewrite that over here. And now we're going to look at solving. What we're going to do is we're adding 9 to both sides because the aim is trying to get the value of x. The opposite of squaring is square rooting, so we can square root that 9. And then to get the x on its own, we then subtract the 1. At this point, it's important to note that the square root of 9 is the positive or negative 3. So that's 1, and we use this notation to show that we can add or subtract. We could simplify this further because 9 is a square number, so that could be 1 plus 3, or the value of x could be 1 minus 3. let's look at this and how it links to your curve and what we've done by finding the values of x. X being 4, x being -2. Our value of c is the y-intercept, so we know it's at -8. Looking at our form of completing the square, we can determine the turning point, which is -1, -9. And now we can sketch our curve. And let's say that's 4 there, because it has to have that line of symmetry going through your turning point. So that's just a sketch. Now let's look at a more difficult example of completing the square. The reason why this is more difficult is because the value of a is greater than 1. So it changes our first step. What we have to do here, in order to complete the square, you need the value of a to equal 1. So what we might have, in terms of they want the form in a, x plus b squared plus c. So what we have to do here on our first step is take out 2 as it is a factor, because whatever the number in front of your x squared is, that was what you need to take out of the bracket to leave you with just 1x squared in the bracket. So we divide everything by 2. So x squared minus 6x plus 15. Now we complete the square as we have done in the steps above. So we are going to divide by 2, leaving us with x minus 3 squared. Bear in mind that 2 has been carried over. So let's expand and simplify x minus 3 times x minus 3. And that leaves us with x squared minus 6x plus 9. But we want to get to plus 15. So we need to add 6. Our final step to get it into this format is to almost multiply out the brackets, but only partially. So we start, because we want our 2 on the outside, x minus 3 squared. There's no need to simplify any of that further, as you'll just get back to your original equation. And then the 2 times 6, which is 12.